We get the Best Of series started today with the great Lincoln Kennedy talking mandatory minicamp and Mike Clay with rookie projections. That plus more on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for June 19th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, we appreciate that. Show continues to grow each and every day because of your consistent support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes each and every day, making sure we look good and sound good. We shout him out. We appreciate him. He does a fantastic job. Check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we normally have the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line available for you at 707-654-4693. This is a different type of show, and the next handful of shows will be different type of shows. We're calling this the Best Of series. This is the one time once a year I go on vacation, and so I just kind of go through a collection of some of the material that I've been collecting from interviews, press conferences, whatever the case may be. So we won't get any calls or texts for the next week or so, as I am on vacation, going to my happiest place on earth, which is Hawaii. Do it every single year. It's the only vacation I take, and it's a chance to kind of recharge and get ready for the next upcoming NFL season. So coming up on today's show in segment number 3, Mike Clay from ESPN had a really good article on ESPN.com talking about rookie projections. So he was a guest on my radio show. You'll hear that conversation. Really good stuff from him, not only on Ashton Genty, but multiple rookies that he pointed out in his article on ESPN.com. Mike Clay will be the guest coming up segment number 3. Segment number 2, I've talked about it quite a bit in the last, week and a half or so here on the show, and that's Lincoln Kennedy. Following mandatory minicamp day number 1, Big Lincoln was out there. I was picking his ear the whole time. Between Lincoln Kennedy and Eric Allen, man, I was in their ears the whole time during mandatory minicamp because, well, they're obviously been there, done that at the highest level, and so hearing from them, I'm going to gain a lot of knowledge. So you'll hear the conversation that I had with Lincoln Kennedy following day 1 of mandatory minicamp from last week. You'll hear that conversation coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, I always do news and notes, but just kind of want to give a recap on this podcast and how we got to where we are over the course of the years. I know that, as I say all the time at the beginning, this show continues to grow each and every day, and I could not thank you enough for how much this show has grown. I actually took over the Locked On Raiders podcast when John Gruden returned. So following the 2017 season, when Jack Del Rio so famously not fired himself, but went up to the podium and announced that he was not going to be returning, John Gruden ended up being the coach 2.0. That's when he got the long contract extension. And, we all didn't know what it was going to look like. He was going to be in place for 10 years. Obviously, that didn't happen. We know about the email situation, but that was the year, that was the offseason that I took over the Locked On Raider podcast. And I'm not going to lie to you, Raider Nation, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I didn't have a clue at all how this was going to go. David Locke had reached out to me by way of Twitter. He had sent me a direct message at your boy Q254 and was asking me if I was interested in it. I was doing the Black Hole Banter with my guy James Arcelana, who I met by way of Twitter. We had a really good run on that podcast, but I didn't know what I was going to do here on this podcast. And he said, well, just give it a try. See what you think. See if you like it, whatever the case may be. I was in Central Texas at the time, ESPN Central Texas, getting a little frustrated at that stage of the game with where I was in my career there and where it was going. And obviously I had an opportunity to talk Raiders. So I said, all right, well, I'll go for it. And so, there's some folks that have been around since day 1 of this podcast with me. And really means a lot. It really does. It's just incredible. Met so many great friends through this podcast, so many great acquaintances. It's been incredible, right? I could shout out everyone, but it would take all day, right? Brother Marquise in the 305, Anna and Rob, Selena in the OC. That's just a few. Vader Raider in the 303, all right? There's just so many people that have been around since day 1 of this podcast. My guy, Border Jumping Raider, that's another one, right? Like I said, the good doc. Like I said, I can go on and on and on, and somebody's going to get left out just because there's been so many incredible people. Raider Al in Georgia, shout out to him. PE in North Carolina, right? Shout out to them. They were around from the very beginning of this when I was just trying to feel my way through it and try to figure it out. And now it's grown to the fact that we're on YouTube. Shout out to my man Ari. been able to bring him into the mix. He's become part of the family. It's incredible. And we all don't always get along, always, right? Every call or text is not always a glowing review or something that's not, a little, I don't want to say controversial. That's the wrong word. That's going to be being a little extreme. But sometimes, calls or texts may be a little harsh or whatever the case may be, however you want to call it. It's just kind of how it is. Shout out to John Train and the ATL, right? Another guy that's been around forever. I mean, man, there's so many. But this podcast has been incredible. It's been one of the main reasons why I ended up in Las Vegas to begin with. Anyone who's listened to this show from the beginning, back in the, like I said, following the 2017 regular season, knows that I always had a goal of getting out of Central Texas and headed back to the West Coast and Las Vegas, and wasn't 100% sure how I was going to do it. But because of this podcast and the popularity of it, it only made all the sense in the world for me to take over that spot on Raider Nation Radio 920, because I already had, a built-up credibility with the, with Raider Nation, obviously, and being a member of Raider Nation also helped as well. But, it's funny, when I arrived at Raider Nation Radio 920, it was this podcast was actually more popular than the radio station. And this podcast actually helped the radio station grow, right? Because I would talk about it, as I talk about it all the time. I talk about the show. I'm never going to not mention the show. That's what I do. But just being able to talk about that, it has opened up that audience as well. So now a lot of people listen to both. They listen to this and they listen to my radio show, which I do appreciate. But that opens that up. Then all of a sudden, having the opportunity to be in Vegas opened up the opportunity for me to be a part of ESPN National Radio, which is incredible, which is a dream come true. As a guy that grew up with ESPN, me and my dad would watch ESPN each and every morning, right? Sports Center, from Chris Berman to Stuart Scott, one of my big-time heroes. Rest in peace to Stu Scott, right? Obviously, Dan Patrick, Rich Eisen, all the great from back in the day. But me and my pops used to always watch ESPN. So to have an opportunity to be a part of ESPN as well has been incredible. And it's just something that I don't take for granted at all. So this has been a fun ride. It really has. I don't know what the future, you never know what the future holds for these type of shows or whatever the case may be, but this has been such a great run. It's fantastic. I'm looking for many, many more years of this. But man, it's just, it's so much, like I said, so much fun. Love meeting people when I get to, meet you at either Allegiant Stadium or something going on here in town at a Raider party or whatever the case may be, or just around, whatever in town, going through the airport not too long ago, ran into a dude, all of a sudden was like, "Hey, Q." I looked around. I'm like, "Wait, hold on. I'm going through TSA. What's going on? Why is this guy shouting out my name?" He's like, "Oh man, I listen to the podcast, so I check it out every day." I was like, "Oh, okay, good." Right? You're going through TSA. You hear your name, you get a little concerned. So that was all good. But so going on vacation, long story short, so I'll be gone till about the 30th. We'll be back to normal shows. But in the meantime, in between time, we'll definitely get into, best of, and hopefully you enjoy the shows and the interviews as much as I enjoy them when they were going on originally. So before we get into segment number 2 in my conversation with Lincoln Kennedy, I want you to hear from Landon Roberts. And it's funny, I start my radio show at some point with a quote from him every single day, because I think what he has to say is so important. When Vinny Bonsignore asked him the question about, why does he care so much? Why does he want to learn so much? He wants to be in defensive coordinator Patrick Graham's ear all the time. When we met with him at OTAs, he said that, he just loves to talk ball, and he's trying to roll up on PG at his house. And so Vinny asked him the question about, why is that so important? And I love the answer. So here's the question and answer from Landon Roberts.
At this stage of your career, why is it important for you to take it that extra level where you want to pull up, like you said, at his house to talk football? Why at this stage of your career are you still invested that deeply?
Because every day matters. I ain't getting no younger. I might be out there moving like I'm young now. I might look, but I ain't getting no younger, and the older you get, the more you start appreciating day in and day out, because I can't get that time back and stuff like that. And I'm in the business of saying, not if I would have did this or if I would have did that. I'm in the business of now, no matter how I take it. And one thing I do know about leadership, just coming up as a young, but leadership is lonely. I promise it's lonely. But at the end of the day, the loneliness ends when you holding that Lombardi at the end of the day. Because everybody you push, including yourself, you strain your family, you strain your coaches, you just always want the extra to just make sure. And people might get tired of you. But one thing I know, when you holding that Lombardi, they're going to come up to you and say, "I appreciate that." And that's all I want. That's all I want. I don't want any fame behind it. I don't want nothing. I want all my teammates to be able to feel that. I want Vegas to be able to feel that and stuff like that. And it starts in practice. And yeah, we get up here and we talk about it with y'all, but we gotta bring it every day to that practice field. And I feel like that's what Pete is doing for us.
I just thought that that's so important, and it's not the full clip. The clip that you just heard is the full clip, but every single day I start my radio show with that every day matters. Every day matters. I'm not in the mode of, talking about I wish I had done this, but no, I'm instead of taking advantage every single day. And I think that applies way more than just to athletes. I think that should apply to all of us. I really do. That's something that I've tried to live by. I try to take advantage of every single moment I get because no moment is guaranteed. None of us know when we're going to take our last breath. None of us know when we're going to get an opportunity or miss an opportunity, right? I mean, opportunities don't just pop up all the time, but when they're there, boom, you got to jump on it, right? And I feel like I've done a really good job of doing that. I try not to miss any opportunity, and I think it's something that we all should live by. Always be ready, always be alert, always be available to take advantage of that opportunity, because if you do, then you can end up in the position that you want to be in. Like, I feel like that I've done a really good job of taking advantage of the opportunities that have been presented to me when presented to me, and that's helped me get to where I'm at right now. And this is not the end all be all. This is not where it's going to end for me. I don't think. I believe that there's more on the way. But again, I got to be ready. Where they say, you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready, right? So that's what we try to do. But I just wanted to pass that along. I actually had someone hit me on Twitter the other day and say, "Hey man, can you play that Landon Roberts sound again? The one you start your radio show with? Can you play that on here?" So I want to make sure I pass that along as well. Coming up in segment number 2, Lincoln Kennedy, the great Lincoln Kennedy. I caught up with him last week after mandatory minicamp day number 1 just to get a recap and just pick his brain on what he was out there looking for and what he was seeing and what he was hearing. You'll hear from Lincoln Kennedy coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors here on the show, and that is Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Surprising insights that you'll learn when you check out Monarch Money, like how much you spend on food delivery, how much you spend on, Uber rides or whatever the case may be. Like, you'll see how many little side things that you have going on that you spend money on. You could take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Again, all one word for half off your first year. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into a conversation with Lincoln Kennedy. Want you to hear the conversation I had with Lincoln Kennedy. This was following day 1 of last week's mandatory minicamp. It was great to catch up with him. Great to catch up with Eric Allen. You'll hear from Eric Allen later on in this Best Of series. Really good conversation I had with EA as well, especially talking about interceptions and the art of interception. But wanted to get Lincoln Kennedy's thoughts, as he was the guy that I ran into and spent a lot of time with day 1 of mandatory minicamp. So he was a guest on my radio show that afternoon. Don't really have to say too much more. Enjoy the conversation. Big Link, it was great to see you out there at practice today. And I asked Colton Miller what's most important for offensive linemen during OTAs when we know physicality is what you guys do, and it's not physical right now. So what's the most important thing that they need to be doing during this mandatory minicamp session?
Chemistry, coming together. You've got to create a synergy, a bond between you and your prospective other offensive linemen. If you have an idea what the combination is going to be out there and your place in it, you need to relay that energy to the 4 other guys that you're sharing the line with, and hopefully they can do the same. And it's all about wanting to get closer to one another, because the offensive line groups are one of the more tightest groups on the team, as you already know, Q. Mm-hmm. So usually that is. So, and this is the time for the leaders to sort of, find themselves, because I've always been a person that believes leaders aren't born, they're made. And so you can make a guy into a leader, whether they lead by example, whether they're one of these rah-rah guys that get you all fired up. But as long as they do their job in the end, you don't care how it gets done. You just want it to be done. So it's about creating synergy and chemistry during this time of year.
What does it say about Colton Miller's leadership, a guy that we all know wants a contract extension, but he's out there working? I know it's mandatory minicamp, but we see other guys around the league holding out. He's there working with a smile and says, I know no other way. I just want to be out here with my guys.
Well, take it for the guys who saw him here last year and you saw before training camp. Colton is coming into this, for what I've seen so far, and it's only been the first couple of days of practice. Colton's come in, he's in shape. He's lost a lot of weight compared to where he was last year alone. That shows, guys that you care about the program. That shows guys that you want to be a part and want to be a bigger part of it. And I think guys are going to rely on him. The fact is, when you look at this roster queue, especially when you look at that room, you look at the number of turnover, the change. Colton's really only been the own mainstay since the Raiders have been here.
Yeah,
that's been the only consistent. There's been constant change. So that goes twofold. That goes for the guys that are come here as new players right now. Also for the guys that have been drafted, seeing what it means to be a Raider, and more importantly, what it means, how important it is for Colton to be on the field doing his thing, and everyone kind of wants to follow suit.
Yeah, and they are doing that. They're following suit for sure. Again, the great Lincoln Kennedy is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920, Unnecessary Roughness. Speaking of following suit, Jackson Powers-Johnson, he's at his normal, natural position, the center position. He has lost weight as well. What have you seen from him in his second year?
Well, it's only been one practice, so I can't really see a whole lot. But look, this is that mandatory rookie symposium type of stuff that we used to do back in the day, where you get it all, you got all the players, and this is where you get all of it done. So it's only one practice. But I'll go back off of what I saw last year. I would never take away from JPP's tenacity, and then more importantly, his when he wants to get after people, how he makes it well known that he is that type of guy. And the Raiders need that. They need that little angry edge, that somebody who wants to rip off your head and take a number 2 down your neck. You know what I mean? You need that. Every offensive line needs that. And I think that's him for him. My issue is this. It's always been, don't create bad spaces for your team. Don't hurt your team. No penalties. There's really no reason why you should jump off sides when you're at home. It's not that you can't hear the count. Can't be aired with the snap. You're important. The ball starts with you as a center, so you got to make sure you get the snap back there. You got to make sure you take care of the football as well, like any other player. So it's the little things that I think are going to make him a better player, but he's on the right track.
I know you just arrived in town today, and you were there at mandatory minicamp. That's where we caught up. But what are you feeling from just kind of the energy around the building with the players and coaches now?
Well, they're flying around. There they are. There's some. Obviously, there's a lot of new faces on the team, but there's a lot of question marks. When you think about the secondary not really being proven, but yet you've got a notable defense. You try to figure out, like for today, I was looking at the run scheme. I was noticing that they were zone blocking the outside stretches, but they were man blocking the inside runs. Thought that was pretty interesting. I noticed that then, as far as protection goes, there was a lot more slide protection and trying to go max protection to make sure that you've got a decent pocket for Gino or whoever the quarterback is back there. But from what I've seen so far, I like the energy. I like the zip. I like the energy. And then there are a lot of times, as you've been around a lot of football players, Q, where you go through things like this, and you just see guys just going through the motion, not really wanting to be there. I don't sense that from a lot of the guys I've seen today. I don't sense that they just want to go through the motions. I sense that they really, really want to make this thing great. And that, as an alumni, and of course what we do, that moves me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do, and I'm glad you said that. I said earlier in the show today that guys aren't going to be able to show up when training camp opens up and work their way into shape. I feel like this staff is going to expect you to come in on the ground running and be in shape when you arrive.
When you take a look at the way the game has advanced and it's changed dramatically since I've played, you have that because you have almost that year-round aspect when you think about it. You've got a facility, a tremendous facility. You've got a state financially that's somewhat welcoming without having state income tax. Why do you need to go anywhere else? Why would you need to go anywhere? I mean, you've got a state-of-the-art facility. You got everything at your disposal. And the fact that they feed you, they have an on-staff nutritionist, which helps out with the big guys. We didn't have that back in my day. You were kind of on your own. But, if you put a bunch of greasy food out there, we're more likely to go for it, right? To angle to. I say that, too, because it's been a full 24-hour, 7-day-a-week cycle of management. I looked at Max Crosby when he was having lunch. He had, sort of a custom plate, but it was more defined with his diet. because you already heard the stories about him being particular with his diet. Mm-hmm. For his diet, the restrictions and everything else, a plate that was created for him specifically. That is what the game has evolved into. And that's why if these guys just take a little bit of time and invest back into their body, the same thing they're hoping to get out of their investment from their body, then they can play for as long as they want to.
Lincoln Kennedy is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness. I want to take you back real quick. You said something that was interesting about the zone blocking on the outside runs and the man blocking on the inside runs. How difficult is that for offensive linemen, or is that difficult to be able to, mix and match those two different styles?
It's not difficult, but it can be somewhat challenging. It also depends on the offensive line that you have. You've got to be intelligent to understand the difference, to be able to know the difference between an inside man run or an outside stretch run. But more importantly, your responsibilities might change up, where if you're an uncovered lineman, you have to reach for a linebacker or a down defensive lineman and work a tandem with your tackle or one of the other players. That is a little bit different than working a man-on-man scheme where you're just going straight downhill right now. So seeing a little bit – and also here's the thing. There are times where you just want to throw things against the wall and see what sticks. Mm-hmm. They might be a better zone blocking team than a run blocking team. Usually the zone blocking teams or guys that have zone blocking schemes in the past have been a lot leaner, smaller offensive linemen who don't necessarily possess that power. But you've got some powerful guys on this Raider offensive line. So there are guys where DJ Glaze and those guys where you want to get going downhill. I want you to hit in the mouth. I don't want you running side to side, sideline to sideline. I don't need that. But I do need you to be athletic. And I think the zone read scheme, as far as I remember with Chip Kelly, the way it fits in, it allows him to use the full width of the field and not just solely, focus on one part of it, because they literally have to run a lot of, tunnel screens, bubble screens to get on the side, or those stretch runs where your offensive line have got to really reach the player and cut and create the angle rather than having the angle be created.
We'll close out with this. What have you early thoughts on Ashton Jeanty, just knowing who he is as a player and just kind of the expectations on how big he can be for this Raiders offense?
Well, his presence has definitely brought a glimmer and a shine, and you could see it in the running back room. At the same point, you can't do one without the other. So until you show me this offensive line is going to work and be able to work consistent, I don't care who we have back there. Here you have a quarterback, or you have a running back. They ain't going anywhere if this offensive line can't block.
Facts, big facts right there. I'll ask you this as we close out. Donald Penn told us a while back as he was on the show, and he said with the way the CBA is and the way that practice goes for players and offensive line in particular, what's really important is the pod drills. The pod drills that you go through are so important. How big is that? Is that something that is big and kind of helps develop the offensive line along the way?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, the thing is that the game has gone from less, in my opinion, less physical, and it's gone to more technical, to what you can do with animations, what you can do with robots, what you can do with all these other technologies that have taken a lot of the physical stress off the body to where we're not hitting. I've always been one of those guys, Q, that says the only way that you're going to get better in going one-on-one is to go one-on-one. But you can't go one-on-one through the whole practice. You see what I'm saying? You got to find a way to get something out of it. So then that's when the technology comes into play, like we've seen. And this is the great thing. This is the draw that brings free agents to a place like this, because you see the way they're practicing, you see the facilities, you see all the amenities. You're like, you know what? I can probably extend my career if I come to a place like this, rather than some other places that don't have all the technology and all the other things at their disposal.
Love it, man. I love it. It's great. It's great always catching up with you, man. You're always dropping some great nuggets on us. I would say, what are you working on? But I feel like you're just in town, just observing right now.
That's all I'm doing. I'm trying to take it in. I want to take in the energy from this coaching staff, the players here, and all the energy that's around just the Raiders in general, surrounding it. Because the way I look at it, we're at the bottom looking up at three other teams. We got to find a way to climb out of this hole. The only way you're going to do this is with hard work, good football play, but more importantly, smart coaches who put people in the right positions.
The great Lincoln Kennedy right there, former Raiders offensive lineman, current color commentary. He does that side by side with Jason Horowitz, does a fantastic job, part of the pregame and postgame show, whatever the case may be. He's actually going to be more of a part of the Locked On Podcast Network moving forward. I do believe he's going to actually be part of the Locked On Raiders podcast show to a certain extent. There's another element of the podcast that's coming pretty soon. So me and Lincoln should be collaborating a lot more. Look forward to that. But that was what he was talking about following day one of mandatory minicamp. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. Coming up in segment number 3, Mike Clay from ESPN. He does a lot of analytics. He has a piece out on ESPN.com about rookie projections, and there was multiple Raiders that he talked about. So, of course, we talked with him about those projections. Mike Clay from ESPN. You'll hear that conversation in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Going to close out today's show hearing from Mike Clay from ESPN. Does a lot of analytics, has a lot of projections, always puts a lot of great articles out on ESPN.com. But one that caught my eye in particular was about rookie projections. And when we think of Raider rookies, we always think of Ashton Jeanty, but there's so many more. Jack Besh, Dante Thornton, Darian Porter, right? There's plenty of different guys in this rookie Raider class. I mean, the draft picks alone were 11 guys, right? And then they went and signed, 15 undrafted free agents. So there's going to be a very young team. There's going to be a lot of youth that is going to be out there performing in 2025. So there was a handful of guys that Mike Clay pointed out in his article on ESPN.com. So we started out just talking about the formula. How do you put this together when you're talking about rookies? You're talking about guys that have never been in the NFL. Transitioning from college to the NFL is not easy, but how does this whole formula come together?
Yeah, it's always tricky. There's a lot of variables here, and certainly scheme is one of them. The supporting cast is another. The specific player, a lot of it comes down to being a little bit conservative with rate stats, right? Whether it's like completion percentage, yards per attempt, those kind of things, yards per carry for running backs. There's certain style things you can look at, right? Like there's a difference between, say, last year looking at Michael Penix and Jaden Daniels, we knew one of those guys would run the ball a ton more. So that would affect perhaps, drop back numbers and scrambles, carries, that kind of thing. Wide receivers, you look at things like where they're used on the field. Average depth to target is a stat I rely heavily on. Is this a short range slot target? Is it a situational vertical guy who's going to have fewer targets but a bit more big plays? And then certainly size is somewhat of a variable when it comes to scoring touchdowns. Whether we agree or not with that, the coaches tend to use the bigger guys near the goal line, as we've seen in years past. So there's a lot to look at, but I study all those things every year to kind of sort through this stuff.
Well, obviously here in Las Vegas, everyone's excited, fired up about Ashton Jeanty and what he could bring to the table. And we were talking about him yesterday, and my big question was, what do you think his biggest challenge will be coming from college, Boise State, into the NFL? So when you look at him, you have him projected really high, obviously his rookie year, but what do you think his biggest challenge will be?
I think it will be overcoming a team that struggled. I mean, is this a Raiders team that is going to be better under Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly running the offense, or is this going to be a competent team that can score points consistently, or are they going to struggle again and only win a handful of games? And it's just going to be really rough. It's rough on a running back in those scenarios for a lot of reasons, because the offense the passing game is not much of a threat, which puts a lot of pressure on them, and they're always playing from behind, and sometimes that leads to fewer carries and more dump-off passes instead of, high percentage plays. So, I think that's the main thing. I do have confidence in Pete Carroll. I think he can get things going in the right direction eventually, but it might be a little bit of a slow start here. This isn't, Saquon going to Philly, a team that's already stacked. It's Jeanty going to a somewhat of a rebuilding Raiders team. So, I'm hopeful that, Pete and Chip can get the most out of Geno Smith and give them at least a competent offense, not one that's just horrendous as we've seen in years past. But they did take a step forward last year with Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers, obviously, is a very underrated player. So if they keep that going, this season, then take a step forward, it's going to be huge for Ashton.
I'm glad you mentioned Saquon Barkley. A lot of people saw what he did with Philadelphia and Derrick Henry in Baltimore, and even Josh Jacobs with the Packers. It's like, okay, running backs are back. Go get him. He's going to be that great. How much more kind of pressure is that putting on these young rookies in a very deep running back rookie class to be able to perform when everyone, last thing they saw was what Saquon did?
Yeah, who did you mention there? Barkley, Henry, and Jacobs. So three of the best teams, three of the best offenses in the NFL, and not to mention, good coaching and, good quarterbacks. I mean, they walked into excellent situations, not exactly the same here. I play a lot of pressure on Jeanty because of his draft pedigree. And because they don't have, they have more skill guys than in years past. They obviously getting Brock Bowers is huge, but they need him. They drafted him for a reason, and they're going to give him a ton of touches. So, I think it's going to lead to a big season. And, running back is one of the positions that, especially the high pedigree guys, they can make a quick impact. There's not other positions that might take a year and a half for like a tight end to get rolling. It used to be the year 3 used to be the year for wide receivers. It's kind of changed. Year 2 is the year for quarterbacks generally. But for running back, they could step right in. So not really worried about it with him. Not really worried about it with some of these other guys like Hampton, who's, you guys will see twice a year on the Chargers.
Yeah.
Not to mention some of the other day 2 guys. There's a really rich running back draft, and a lot of these guys are going to play big roles right away.
Mike Clay from ESPN is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness. Speaking of the running backs in the AFC West, rushing yards and touchdowns, you have Genty at number 1, 1,120 yards, 7 TDs. Hampton right behind him, just under 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. R.J. Harvey from the Broncos, just under 900 yards. And then touchdowns from scrimmage, Hampton at number 1. Could this end up becoming a division where we just see a ton of the ground game from these special running backs that they have now?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. We saw a big change at that position within that division. A big change over at that position in the division. A lot of rhyming words here. I think Hampton, Genty, and Harvey will be the lead back for their respective teams. I think they'd be hard pressed to change that unless they force it with Najee Harris in LA, but I don't think so based on his salary and the fact that they spent a first round pick on Hampton. So yeah, those guys are going to be busy this year. And there's also questions in Kansas City. Who's their lead back going to be? Is Isaiah Pacheco healthy now? So could they add someone else? We'll see. So a lot of change over at that position in the AFC West. It's going to be really exciting.
One name that you put in your piece that really stood out to me was from the receiver position. Number 4, you had Jack Besh, 747 yards, 4 touchdowns. A lot of folks are pretty excited about him. They know his story about his brother, but this is a hell of a player. What do you see from him, and can he slide in and kind of take that starting role immediately for the Raiders?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, look, all due respect to Trey Tucker, I think he's a good player, probably more of a 3 or 4 sort of player. I think that he was kind of forced into that job last year and played a pretty substantial role. And I'm not sure you want to be handing him, 15, 16, 17% of the targets. It's a pretty sizable number. And that's why I think they spent that second round pick on Besh. So I do think he's going to step into a very sizable role. Should be a weak starter along with Jacoby Myers. And then obviously you're going to probably see a lot of 12 personnel with Bowers and Mayer as well this season. So my guess is that's what they're going to try to do. That's probably the ideal outcome. So if he's up to the task, I mean, he's gonna play a big role right away.
How much do you think Besh's toughness is going to help out even in the ground game with Ashton Genty, being able to block?
Yeah, I think no doubt you need that. I mean, I think you need that. I think the offensive line is serviceable, probably a little below average. So I think you're going to need all you can get from, whether it is the 12 personnel, Besh, the wide receivers helping out. No doubt that's going to be a factor here.
Mike Clay from ESPN is with us here at Raider Nation Radio 920. We're talking about his piece on ESPN.com, projecting 2025 NFL rookie leaders in 10 stat categories. Mike, one of the categories, interceptions. A guy I'm very high on, Darian Porter, a third-round pick out of Iowa State. You have him there tied for third with 1 interception. Apparently, rookies don't get a ton of interceptions the last couple seasons, but what do you see from Darian Porter, the long, lengthy guy from Iowa State?
Yeah, I think there's opportunity at corner. I think this is one of the shakier cornerback rooms on paper in the entire NFL. I mean, Eric Stokes, you bring him in, he didn't really work out in Green Bay. You have Bennett, Richardson. So, bring in Porter. I know that he was a 3rd round pick, but they need him. They need to hit. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. We don't know for sure if he's going to be that guy. But the fact is there's opportunity for him to potentially win a starting job right out of the gate. That would be best case scenario here. So you're right. I mean, interceptions, I have the highest projected guy I have in interceptions in the whole article is 2.
Yeah.
Because, and I know that seems wild, someone might get 3 or 4, but there are not that many interceptions by rookies. There's 48 total in the entire NFL last season. First round rookies last year, mine for 2 interceptions. So it just shows you how rare it is. And even, part of the reason for that is even first round corners sometimes don't play a lot. It's just it's a hard position and takes a little bit of time. It might be a long shot for Porter to be an every down player right away, but no doubt about it, he has the opportunity on this depth chart.
Yeah, and I don't know when Porter's going to get out there and when he's going to start, but, I mean, he fits the prototypical Pete Carroll, long, lengthy, fast cornerback. I mean, just with that knowledge and knowing that what Pete Carroll's been able to do with corners like him, it feels like he should have a really good opportunity.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. Again, sometimes it's opportunity, and I think there is opportunity here for him.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to kind of pay attention and see what's going on with him. Well, I did want to ask you real quick before I let you go. Travis Hunter, I know he's in Jacksonville, but he's a fantastic type player. I thought he was going to be cornerback one and then have a package at wide receiver. I'm not sure how Jacksonville's playing him. What do you think he should do his rookie year? How would you kind of use Travis Hunter knowing he can play both sides of the ball?
Yeah, I think they kind of tipped their hand with what they did with him at practice. He walks in there and just immediately is with the receivers and then is playing that role. And then they're like, all right, well, yeah, we'll let him dabble a little bit at corner. And he's doing a little bit more of that now. But I think it's pretty evident that they need him on the offensive side of the ball. They need another playmaker. They cleaned house of some other guys like Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis. I think it's pretty evident he's going to be lining up along with Brian Thomas, who's obviously terrific and will take some pressure off. They also got rid of Evan Ingram, keep in mind. So, I mean, if it's just Brian Thomas out there and no Hunter, I mean, you're talking Parker Washington, Brenton Strange, Diami Brown. That's not going to cut it. You got to give Trevor Lawrence a weapon. So Hunter's going to be out there. I think I would say maybe it's 70-30, 80-20, something like that, where he'll be playing, mostly offense, but he'll get some run in the defensive side of the ball. And again, you tip your hand with the depth chart, right? They have Tyson Campbell at corner. They have Montaric Brown, who played a full-time role last year. They signed Jordan Lewis, who's a really good slot corner. So they have some options. Darian Jones played over 600 snaps for them last year at corner. So they have some options at that position, but they definitely have a major need in terms of offensive skill guys, so expect him to play a lot of offense.
Mike Clay from ESPN right there. Rookie projections. Again, his article out on ESPN.com. I thought that was some good stuff. That was a conversation that I had with him during OTAs, and this is the perfect time of year for those kind of articles, for projections, for rankings. It's just what it is. You look at the calendar, you get it, right? It is what it is at this stage of the game. Late July, training camp gets going. Man, all of a sudden, it'll be going full throttle. But right now, it's going to be slow and methodical, but I thought that was some really good stuff from Mike Clay from ESPN. So that's day one right there of the best of series that we've got cooking. Coming up on tomorrow's show as we close out the week, we'll have that Eric Allen interview that I talked about. Paul Gutierrez, as a matter of fact, have him on the show as well. Got to talk to him about the same conversation that I was having with EA. So tomorrow we'll do everything when it comes to turnovers, interceptions. We've had that conversation here on the podcast as I went down a long rabbit hole of 25 plus years of Raiders and their interceptions and lack of interceptions and how that's something that they've got to clean up. That's all something you'll hear on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.